Mr. Chairman, Professor M.B. Kamath, Professor M.D. Nadabat, and Professor Arvind Kumar. I would first like to thank you for organizing this conference and for inviting me here. And I would also like to thank the Association of Asia Scholars, about which you have just heard from my colleague, the President of AAS, Professor Shridharan Singh. And he has outlined the key role played by Dr. Reena Marwa in sustaining this, founding and sustaining this association. Thank you so much for organizing this conference and for inviting me here. What I will speak about today is peace, security and economic development in South Asia as a prelude to this conference on the emerging South Asian security scenario. And what I will try to do is to look at the issue of South Asian security in conjunction with economic relationships between these countries in the context of or from the perspective of international relations theory. Now, applying a few heavy-duty IR theory concepts. So that's what I will attempt to do. Now, let me just first start with the post-Cold War evolution of South Asian security post the end of the Cold War 1989-90. Essentially, the end of the Cold War, and I'll also emphasize that I'm looking at it also with the impact of these developments on India's foreign policy, India being the largest and the centrally located country in the South Asian region, which has borders with all the other SAARC countries except Afghanistan now, which is a member of SAARC in the last 2-3 years. And none of the other countries have borders with each other. They essentially, India is the hub, both geographically and in economic terms of the region. So whenever we talk about South Asian regional cooperation or security, one has to, India's role and foreign policy come into it centrally. Now, the end of the Cold War and the dissolution of the Soviet Union in 1991 was a turning point for the region and for Indian foreign and security policies because essentially it ended the deterrent effect on China of the Indo-Soviet Treaty of 1971, which helped to deter Chinese intervention in the Bangladesh War, December 71, and subsequently was a kind of an implicit, it was not an explicit security treaty, but it was an implicit deterrent. Now that ended. The other thing was that the non-alignment, which was the basic paradigm of Indian foreign policy, the rug was pulled from under the feet of non-alignment in a sense, because one of the two poles in the bipolar world essentially collapsed. And third, the beginning of this 1989-91 post-Cold War period was also marked by two other developments, one domestic and one foreign, for India. That is, one was the economic, the balance of payments crisis and the launch of a comprehensive structural adjustment program with IMF help initially from July of 1991. That is the beginning of the last 20 years of economic liberalization. Okay. And fourth was the beginning of the Kashmir insurgency, which started off in December 1989, which sharply deteriorated the India-Pakistan relationship, which after the 71 war, after the 72 Simla agreement, which, if you remember, the Simla agreement said we will keep India-Pakistan relationship, the differences will be resolved bilaterally and without force. That from 72 to about 89, India-Pakistan relations were essentially didn't spin out of control. They were essentially a kind of a managed conflict, which was fairly low-key. But from the takeoff of the Kashmir insurgency from December 89, which is still continuing, I mean the separatist insurgency has not been quelled in the last 23 years. And it has the backing of Pakistan. India-Pakistan relationship at the outset of the Cold War in 89 onwards deteriorated sharply. Okay. So these were the sort of four important developments which happened at the time of the onset of the post-Cold War period in South Asian security and especially within India-Pakistan relations and Indian foreign policy. Now, at the same time, I mean, in the last 23 years, unlike in a lot of regions around the world, despite the growth of SAARC, which was founded in 1985, and the slow, I mean anemic and slow, but nevertheless significant growth of trade between these countries in a small way. Nothing like any of the other major integrated regions of the world, but still the formal process has been limping along but kept going. Despite that, there is no South Asian Security Treaty. There is South Asian security relations are not institutionalized. What you have is essentially a number of bilateral agreements between India and each of its neighbors. There are peace and friendship treaties with Nepal, Bhutan, and there's an Indo-Sri Lanka trade accord, and there's an Indo-Bangladesh friendship treaty which existed from 72 till it was allowed to lapse in 1997, and then is